Yo, guys, what's going on? Lucky Cheese 7 is back again to give you guys another Boruto Naruto the next generation's manga chapter live stream discussion. It's been a while. It honestly has been such a long time since I've actually A been on YouTube and B also just do a live stream discussion. For those of you who aren't aware, I was actually out of town for the last few weeks, which is why there hasn't really been much content on my end of things. But I told myself when I get back, we're going to tackle everything and we're going to make sure we're consistent. Super, super consistent like we used to be, to the best of my ability, anyway. But I do also just want to say because I didn't cover chapter 74, because, like I said, I was out of time when Chapter 74 came out, right? So I'll briefly talk about 74. I don't want to go too much in depth with 74 because I know the big host of the chapter was on, or what's been going around is mainly on Chapter 75. So I want to focus more on that. But needless to say, Chapter 74, long story short, Ada came into town, she found her new place. Boruto's there too. All the guys were like super infatuated with her, with the exception of Boruto and Kawaki, which was really telling. Actually, it was really, really super telling, and it seems like maybe Kawaki could also sense Momoshiki's presence, potentially. But what I also really liked about Chapter 74 is that we're getting a little bit more focus again on Sarada and Mitsuki because when it came to the Code arc, Mitsuki and Sarada kind of just vanished. Like they were there, but they didn't really contribute much to the story. Whereas when you see the other arcs, like the Kawaki arc, the Owl arc, the Magina Bandits arc, they were there. Like they've been there. So Code arc was kind of like one of those things where, we don't know. Now, granted, this technically, I think, is still a part of the Code arc. If I'm not mistaken, I think we're still in the Code arc. So this, I think, could be like what the second half of the Code arc. I mean, someone can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I feel like after what happened to Code, like this is a entirely new arc altogether. But I mean, if it's still the same arc, then hey, it's cool. But you get this. You see Shikadai, Inojin, Chocho's there too. Still going on about her love life. Eida, casually showed up. Damon's there too. Like I said, you get the infatuation. Chojo got infatuated too. Funny enough. I no, if I remember correctly, now that I'm looking at it, I think Shikadai was also unaffected too, right? Let me see. I don't think Shikadai was affected. Because the two we're seeing that got affected straight up. Yeah, it was just the Inojin and Shikadai, so not Shikadai, Inojin and Chocho. So, oh, that's why, because he didn't see her face properly. So he's kind of unfazed. I mean, Mitsuki's feeling it too. So Sarada's unaffected as well. And Konohamaru, man, that's disappointing. I feel so sad for Konohamaru. Guy's been treated like absolute shit. Because no joke. Let me just say this right now. I'm currently rereading Naruto again from like the very, very beginning. Like I just started rereading it yesterday. I'm on chapter 2. And I was like, yo, what the hell happened to Konohamaru? Like this man had as a kid, I was like, he's kind of cool. And then when you see how he is right now in Boruto, it's what it's reminding me of? It's reminding me of Yamcha. Like, does anybody remember how Yamcha was pre Dragon Ball Z? Like OG Dragon Ball. Yamcha was the shit in OG Dragon Ball. And then all of a sudden in Z, he becomes fodder tier, and I'm like, It's like, what the hell? Come on. That's how I'm seeing Konohamaru. Which, okay, I know the anime has done a few things for him. And I say a few, but still. It's kind of sad because you go from Naruto and you see where Konohamaru is right now as a sensei, and it's like, is that like as the grandson of Hiruzen Sarutobi, Asuma Sarutobi? This is how we're treating him? I mean, okay, look, Konohamaru could get his time to shine, and if he does, that'll be great. Also, Moegi showed up too, which is nice. But yeah, my man Konohamaru has like no chill whatsoever. He even falls unconscious too. But you got their demons there. He causes a scene. Yeah, like 74 was like really simple. Honestly, it was a really simple chapter. It was like, all right, Ada shows up. She gets to the spot where she needs to be at. You got the introductions. A little taste of her abilities, and outside of that, yeah, chapter 74, I can't really say was a whole lot, but it was also setting up the conversation between Shikamaru, Naruto, and Amado. So I'd say this overall, chapter 74 was like okay plus to get. That's where I would rank. Nothing like super crazy. Um, but nothing that was just like really, that's it. But like you had some nice little interactions, but I think for a monthly chapter, 74 could have been a lot more. And that's not the case with 75. 75, oh my god, you get a whole host of things. Because chapter 75 is titled The Domain of the Gods. And when I read that chapter title, I was like, gods. Like we talking Hagoromo, we talking Hamura, like Kaguya, like what kind of gods we referring to? Like Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, all that kind of shit. But needless to say, we see Ada standing there in her appeals or whatnot that everyone's kind of like eye googling over. I'm referring to the fandom more so than people like in the verse, but whatever. Ada enchants all regardless of gender. Only blood relatives and Ootsutkis are unaffected or aren't affected. Same difference. Meaning it doesn't work on Boruto, Kawaki, and her little brother Damon. Plus, her left eye's Senragon allows her to peek in on all the things happening across this world, which is kind of broken actually. Like peeking on any little thing. It's not just within the country or the continent. It's throughout the world, and I'm just sitting here going like, that's kind of like if this was like old school Naruto, shit, I don't know. That to me just stood out. Like just getting that little bit of detail about her Senragon. She can also hear conversations as if she were actually there. She also lets her browse past events, though she can't see anything that took place prior to her birth. So for now, she can only go back 16 years. As for her brother Damon, he reflects all attacks, any actions that would inflict harm on him. And though it's necessary for his hand to be touching another person, his ability will also transfer to the person currently touching him. And Shikamaru says, that's everything in a nutshell. So this was all just Shikamaru explaining everything. And then, I'm not gonna lie, I could kind of relate to Naruto on this front with what he says because he's like, what a crazy list of abilities. It makes my head hurt. I mean, look, if you're like trying to sink all that in like at once, it's like, whoa, that's a lot. Like, how do you process that? So, on that aspect, I could see Naruto being just very meta about that, and I think it's kind of nice seeing. But It's also in character for Naruto to think that way too. Damon is an irritating, pesky brat, but just be careful not to aim murders to tend towards them, no matter what. That's what Amado's saying, because that too will be reflected. It depends on certain conditions, but it will all rebound back to you. And Boruto's like, "What? Okay, now you've lost me." And Damon's like, "Want to test it? Yeah, no thanks." And Kawaki just like gives him the glare. He's like just looking straight at him, and again, not even 2 seconds, just smacks him. Boruto's kind of surprised, like, "What?" It's like, looks like it's legit, Boruto, as you just saw. And again, Boruto's just a little freaked out. Like, you really imagined clobbering him. Woot woot. Is something wrong with your head? That ain't normal. And Eida doesn't really have anything to say, but Naruto says, "I've been wondering, Amado, how the heck did you develop so many unbelievable abilities?" Develop wouldn't be accurate. I'm a mere human, not a god. The crafting of abilities is a feat permitted only to gods. What I did is simply transplant things that already exist. And Shikamaru's like, transplant? Explain that. As Amado smoking a cigarette, yeah, their abilities were brought about by a god. Someone who actually evolved into a godlike being. Which is crazy because going by OG Naruto, you would be thinking it's Kage. Like, as far as the Naruto world is concerned, that godlike being is Kaguya, the progenitor of all chakra. Or, in this case, it's the Ten Tails. But to get that, okay, it's this Otsutsuki Shibe. I think it's how you say it, right? Otsutsuki Shibe. Leaving board, kind of stud. Naruto surprisingly. Otsutsuki Shibe. And Kage's like, Otsutsuki? Who is this Otsutsuki Shibe? Who are they? Or where are they? Is what Shikamaru says. And Amado just says, "Don't worry, he's no longer with us. All that exists are his remains." Bored like his remains. Do you remember what I told you about how the chakra fruit that forms from absorbing all life on a planet is a mass, colossal energy of genetic information? And that Otsutsuki are a species that evolves through devouring those fruits. And as we see here, I'm assuming that's Shibe, we're saying. By repeatedly undergoing karmic resurrection, Shibe cheated death, devoured many fruit over several millennia. We're not talking like hundreds of years ago. We're talking millennia, which you know. And eventually, the culminative of evolution led to godhood. And you see, there's a beautiful, and I mean beautiful, beautiful panel shot of Shibe Otsutsuki. And I mean, I know some people will probably say, "Oh, we're just getting more stuff that wasn't really talked about in the Narutoverse." It's just stuff that comes out of nowhere. Yeah, it is kind of one of those things like, all right, this stuff wasn't really thought about when it came to the original Naruto, but stuff like this does add to the lore, and I do find that kind of intriguing actually. Like you eat multiple fruits, not through hundreds of years, but of like millennia, years upon and I mean like a super long time ago, like 600, 700, like 1,000 plus years, and this is the result you get. Is that if you culminate a lot of chakra fruits, this is what happens. Intriguing. Not gonna lie, it's actually pretty intriguing. Actually, get the proper terminology here. Yeah, millennia would be 1,000 years ago. So it was over several millennia. So it was like several thousands of years ago. So and it's not like just a one in time deal. It's something that just took time. And Boruto's like godhood. Kawaki just doesn't know what to say. Naruto says, setting aside possible godhood, let's get back to the original topic. You're saying these various cheat-like powers in Ada and Damon, no, of Ada and Damon, are originally abilities that this Shibe fellow possessed. That's right. Transplanting DNA harvested from Shibe's remains, resulting in the endowing of one or more of his abilities. And Shikamaru, contacts Katasuke like, hey, yeah, that Katasuke, is what he's saying technologically possible? And all Katasuke says is, yes, I've been listening. It's just transplanting a person's abilities into someone else. Even using scientific ninja tools would be difficult with current human technology. Which, I don't know. That by itself, I find kind of strange. I'll be perfectly real here. That little panel right there with Katasuke, that line of dialogue, I think is a little iffy, but you know. Next panel, you see Sumeria next to him. He's like, however, having now possessed numerous tech beyond human intellect, like at the airship's crash site, and in young Kawaki's body, I can't say with any surety that it is impossible. That's low, Shikamaru. You'd think I'd make up stuff like you'd make things up at this point, and Shikamaru is like, "Don't pay my cautious nature any mind. To be blunt, I just can't get myself to trust you. I mean, Amado is one of those cases where it's like, all right, how truthful is he actually being? It is that situation with Amado where you don't really know if he can be trusted 100%. You know." And even Naruto goes like, now, come on, Hamado. Shibe's various abilities were quite incredible. It's said without needing to weave signs as with ninjutsu, he generated storms with a wave of his hand and called forth thunderbolts with just an angry roar. You know what this kind of reminding me of? This is reminding me kind of like the big hype that the Ten Tails got. Like, anyone who read Naruto Weekly, remember the whole, mythology behind the Ten Tails that Kurama was talking about? How he can do all these things, and it's not to say that that the Ten Tails couldn't do it because we saw it briefly, but it wasn't really built up to what we saw. And likewise with Kurama too, like early Naruto, like chapter 1, we were told Kurama could do like all these things, like you know, bring about like a change in the weather and everything. I don't remember the exact panel, but it said Kurama could bring about a lot of chaos and destruction. Now, yes, granted, you could also bring up that, well, by the time we got to Kurama, like actually, being an asset, being like a full on, yo, we with the home team, kind of restrained himself. It's one of those elements, if you know what I mean. But anyway, this is also where things get interesting because Amado clearly says, given the name Shinjutsu, such godlike abilities were neither ninjutsu nor sage arts. They were phenomenal equivalent to divine miracles. And seeing Shibe there and just seeing, just the destructive energy just around him. Again, only through through an angry roar. Not even using his hands, but just through a roar he could do that. I mean, it really is going to say a lot about the scale of where the Naruto verse is actually in right now, especially getting this guy. But you know, Naruto says Shinjutsu? With a question mark. And again, Boruto still just left puzzled about all this. Eida, same thing. In addition to Eida and Damon's abilities, Code's claw marks are also Shinjutsu, as are the Sukuna Hikona and the Daikoku Ten that Kawaki inherited from Ishiki. And the immortality art that enables resurrection, karma. And again, like you could just tell based on Kawaki's faces, like getting kind of annoyed here, but whatever. Amano still goes on to say, in fact, ninjutsu itself fundamentally attempts to reproduce phenomena similar to shinjutsu through weaving signs and concentrating one's chakra. And again, Sard is there too. And I'm assuming Sard is the one that wrote things. With all due respect, are you saying our ninjutsu are nothing more than a pale imitation of the shinjutsu? Which Boris was like, Sarda. And Amano says, did I offend you? I'm simply stating a fact. Shikamaru says, putting aside the necessity of that, I think I do know pretty well that the Ootsutkis' technological capabilities far exceed our own. And I got a question. With the karmic resurrection, he ought to live for forever. So why is he a corpse? Or did someone kill Shibe? Which, not gonna lie, is actually a pretty interesting question. And Amado says, I don't really know what happened. It's certainly possible that he was killed. But what if, after so many cycles of evolution, he ascended to a higher dimension where a physical body isn't required? If no body is needed, neither are resurrections nor vessels. It's a hypothesis that Shibe deliberately discarded his body. I see. On the one side, this is Shikamaru talking, by the way. On the one hand, it sounds like crazy talk, but if a god is meant to be a flawless being, then that theory does have some merit. And poor, poor Naruto. Oh my god, he's like, yeah, right. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. Like he is super lost. I don't blame the guy. I really don't. And Boruto. Hey, what are we talking about? And Amano says, apologies, I got sidetracked. What I'm trying to say is that the Otsutsuki's power contained hope. Cheesy, but you know, to make what is impossible to us possible, such as bringing my daughter back to life, which we've heard that statement before. He talked about his daughter some time ago, and it was kind of recent too. I don't think it was last chapter, but he did bring it up like a while back. Sort of like bring his daughter back to life, and just as Sarda says that, Delta comes into the picture, and she's like, "Oh, Delta, you shouldn't be here. I know, but I really wanted to see Ada. Don't tell Shikamaru, okay?" Like she's like super blushing about it and everything. And Sarda's like, "No way. Besides, the sensor unit will detect you right away. At least I didn't show up over here. No, at least I didn't show up over there. Just let me look at her. No, you're practically, suggestible. I mean, come on, I'm gonna get in trouble." And still, Delta's like, "Please, just a few minutes. I'll stay right here, please, pretty please." Like, okay, stuff like this, I don't think we really need. Like, it's amusing, but part of me is kind of like, I could kind of do or without this. I'll be honest. Like, this is like one of those cases where I'm like, it doesn't really need to be there, but whatever. It's it's one of those cases where you could just take or leave. But oh my god, what happens next? I did not think this was actually going to happen, but Sumeria like charges into like like the ninja dash, saying Delta, time to go to sleep, and immediately Delta like shuts down, and Zarda's like her emergency shutdown code. And poor Sumire, feel bad for her. Like you can just see like how exhausted she is. She's like, I'm so sorry. She just flew off. I haven't run like this in ages. Which, given when Sumire was last on a mission, I think it was like with the Chugo stuff, right? I want to say that was the last mission she was on. But I know like after that, um, there was that whole goodbye party for Sumire to join the scientific division. And I know we know since then she's just been, hanging around with them. So her getting exhausted is actually something, you know, that's fine. I mean, it makes sense given the context of the story. He's like, haven't run like this in ages. And Michi's like, poor class rep. And Sumari says she's not supposed to be able to disobey either Dr. Kataski or me. Her program needs to be checked. Mitsuki says, that's how strong Ada's charm is. I need to be careful too. And Sarada says, I guess her ability is a lot more fearsome than I thought. And you see Delta there, Ada, and Shikamaru's like, bring your daughter back to life. And Naruto says, you didn't mention before that your daughter died 12 years ago. And Boruto says, 12 years ago? That's around when I was born. And Amado says, my daughter, Akabi, I think it's how you say it, right? Akabi, suffered from a terrible disease. It was an unknown cause. No drug or cure was effective. It was a fatal illness that the doctors had given up on. I didn't rail against them because I already discovered a way to resolve the situation. I'd make her a new body via cloning. I didn't care about the ethics anymore. It seemed logical to give her a totally new shell, rather than fix up a defective product. After all, this was a field that I had long tinkered in. The bar was significantly easier to clear than developing new meds. Akabe died a short time later, yet I wasn't sad. At least, not at that point. I plugged away and raced against time, preserved Akabe's brain, and succeeded in extracting, digitizing, and creating a backup of her memories. About 9 months after my daughter's death, she was abruptly complete. She had Akabe's voice, her exact appearance, plus her memories, but she was a total stranger. So essentially, Akibe Delta is, Amano's dead daughter, which is something the fandom has been thinking about for a while. And I mean, like a super, super good long time. It's been a theory that the fandom's been like, yo, is it possible that, you know, Delta could be Amano's daughter? The other theory was Ada too, but I think it kind of makes sense. But you can just see the horrificness on like Amano's face. She definitely retained Akibe's memory in full, yet she wasn't Akibe. It wasn't just her personality, her humanity. It's difficult to explain, but it seems a human's consciousness is more than just an aggregation of memories. I kept remaking her, but each time she was someone other than Akibe. Even if I could create a new person, it just wasn't possible to reproduce one who had existed before. I realized this was the domain of the gods, which is, referring to the chapter title, a world that humans were not meant to step into. And it finally hit me. that my daughter no longer existed. And that's when, hey, Jigen shows up. He appeared. He said he'd reunite me with her if I assisted him. And Naruto says, and that was Jigen. As in Otsutsuki Ishiki, huh? When his objectives were achieved, he'd reward me by reviving my daughter. That was the deal. I aligned with Kara as a last hope, not knowing that his goal, the chakra fruit, would come at the cost of this planet's life. And Shikamaru says, fulfill Karma's mission and get your daughter back. But the planet would die. What an untenable decision. Again, Boruto doesn't really know what to say, and Naruto goes like, so you gave your daughter up and decided to take Ishiki down. I was prepared to do anything for her, but what's the point if there's no planet to live on? Don't get me wrong, though. I haven't given up on my daughter at all. Jigen never specified how he was planning to revive my daughter. It's even possible he may not have ever intended to do so. But as I worked towards taking him down, I discerned the mechanism of karmic resurrection. And then, get a shot of Kawaki. It's what Ishiki was trying to do through vessels. And my attempt to reproduce Akebe using a clone was almost identical. My failed efforts at reproducing personality, which crossed into the domain of gods, was possible only with the miracle of godly power, the Shinjutsu karma. And then we cut over to, back to the holding grounds where everyone's at. And then you see Sumeri. Now I get it. What Mr. Amada was planning to use Kawaki's karma for. And again, you see Delta, see Sarada just looking over. You go back to Amado. I added Akibe's data to Kawaki's reconstructed karma. All Kawaki has to do is implant karma into a new clone body that I'll prepare. And that should be enough to revive Akibe. Naruto's there, Boruto's there too, still kind of like, I don't really know about this. And Boruto's like, I totally thought Mr. Amado was plotting something a lot worse. And yet, Kawaki still just like, I don't buy it. Not for a fact. There's something else this man's hiding. Like, what? And then Shikamaru says, Eida. Yes, Shikadeer? I can't trust Amado's tale, including whether he even really had a daughter or not. I want proof. Can you check with your Senragon? And even through all of that, Amado is just like, really, bro? Like, I say all this shit to you. I have this heart to heart conversation, and you don't believe a damn word I just say? Get the. I can imagine that's what Amado's thinking. I can imagine that's the exact thing he's thinking. But, you know, it's just amusing. Hey, Shikamaru, don't you think that's a bit much? And Shikamaru says, I'm just making sure. Don't take offense, Amado. This is my job. And Amado's just kind of like speechless. Eida says, you've quite the awful personality, Shikadeer, but I kind of like it. And Shikamaru's like, good to hear. Now, if you would. And Boruto's like, whoa, that's harsh, Uncle Shikamaru. And right when that happens, like, okay, if you thought, you know, the stuff with Shibei Otsutsuki or something, lore wise and everything. This next part's a real doozy because holy shit. Boruto hears something and it's like, hey boy, react if you can hear me. And he's like, what? I was wondering why your petty thoughts were suddenly available to me, but this confirms it. And the voice Boruto hears is none other than Momoshiki. Hey, what's going on? a new effect that apparently arose. And Boruto isn't really saying this out loud, mind you. He's just thinking to himself. But Momoshiki says a new effect that apparently arose from having supplemented some of your damaged flesh with my data. It seems our thoughts are crossing over. And Boruto's like, this is a mind transfer jutsu. Momoshiki's thoughts are echoing inside my head. God. It's grating, but never mind. Just don't let Kawaki catch on. I'd rather not tangle with him again. And Boruto just looks directly at Kawaki, and he's just thinking, like, about what Amino just said. There's something off about it. He would distrust him too, just like Shikamaru. Then again, the whole part about gods and Shibe, it was sounding real shady to me. And Momoshiki confirms. Sorry, but the Shibe part is true. He was an Otsutsuki, who, as Amino correctly guessed, is no longer in this dimension. What? For real? The shame with Shinjutsu. I too have observed this plane a long time, and I have an intimate understanding of all extant Shinjutsu. Then you're saying he's lying about his daughter? And Momoshiki says, who knows? I have no knowledge of that. It is Aida's ability that's bothering me. And that is honestly really telling. The fact that Aida's ability is bothering Momoshiki. I don't know. I find that kind of fascinating. Of all the things, that's what's bothering him. And it might be because, well, Momoshiki might have something up his sleeve. Like, there's something about Momoshiki we really still don't know just yet. But, you know, let's see here. Anyway, that is bothering me. Huh? Amino asserted that Ada's abilities are Shinjutsu, and her Senragon is certainly so. However, that love charm power cannot be. I'm bored with like, so what of it? And Momoshiki says, as I just said, I know all Shinjutsu, but I have never heard of such an ability. In short, it is possible that Amado is lying. What are you saying? That it's a type of scientific ninja tool or something? Plus, wh- why would he need a lie about that? Indeed. That is what raises the question. You see Ada looking a little bit directly at them. It was only a peek, but Amado's daughter, Sanzu Akibe, did exist. She died when she was 24. At the very least, those events he told us about were all true. Happy now? Thank you, Ada. I appreciate your help. Hey, now, that's it? You question my honesty? I have nothing else to say? I'm just. And that was, Amado talking. But Shikamaru's like, I'm just doing my job. The reason for my distrust lies with you. Don't pretend you're innocent while criticizing others. And Boruto's still just talking with Momoshiki. Like, what about our situation? How long will we be linked? Not as if I want to be doing this either. Our thoughts are leaking to each other against our wills. Boruto's like, that's easy for you to say. You better not be trying to trick me. Babble away. I, for one, hope it'll be brief. And Boruto's just saying, like, right when this moment happens, let me just say this right now, right when this moment happens, it looks as if Jogon's activated. A part of Boruto we haven't exactly seen yet. But you see this, and it looks like a glimpse of the future. Like, you see the Hokage's faces on the mountains, and they're like, you find him? He couldn't have gotten that far yet. Don't let him escape. And, again, you still see Boruto's eye, the Jogon. You see Inojin, you see Shikadai, you see Chocho. That just ain't what a friend does. You hear? Still looking through the eye. See Sarda, Mitsuki. Found him over here. And Mitsuki's in Sage mode. So, when Mitsuki's in Sage mode, there's some shit that goes down. Some shit goes down whenever Mitsuki's in Sage mode. And that by itself already says a lot. So, yeah. um, he says, "You've managed to truly anger me." And it's Kawaki, and Kawaki's like in um his karma design and whatnot. He's got like the horns and everything. So something triggers that. We don't know what it is, but you see Boruto there. He's like just holding his hand, like in total shock. He kind of looks like he's 16 here, if I'm being perfectly honest here. Like Boruto here in this panel looks kind of older, like the way he's drawn and everything. And he just like, what was that? And Momoshiki's just thinking about that too. Then you get Eida. Eida looks over at Boruto. And that's the end of the chapter. And you're kind of just left sitting there going what the hell? Like, what was that? You know? Um, so let's talk about some of the critiques first that this chapter does bring. I think you could have done without the whole Delta comedy thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's amusing to see. But if I'm being perfectly honest here, I don't really think it was needed. That I do think is where this chapter lacked, personally. Now, getting all the stuff with the Shinjutsu, getting the stuff with Shiba Otsutsuki, learning a little bit more about that, I thought was fascinating. And that was always something that was Naruto's strongest point. It was always Naruto's strongest points when it came to storytelling. Was the lore, learning more stuff about the Naruto world. We learn stuff, through the Sage of Six Paths, through the Divine Tree. Even though the Divine Tree stuff was kind of last minute through Modern and I think because hey, last arc, but like when you're slow building all these things, not even just slow building, but when you're bringing up like these new intricate stuff for the lore, for the lore, it really does kind of bring into perspective, like, all right, like we thought we knew a lot about the Naruto world, but getting stuff like this is like, okay, that's kind of fascinating. And it is kind of one of those things where the Otsutsuki, if you were just reading like the original Naruto, it's like, well, that kind of came out of left field. But getting the Boruto, I think the Otsutskis, I'm not saying all of them, because let's be fair, Kaguya left a lot to be desired. Toneri, abilities aside, was a joke. Let's be real. Toneri as a character in the last was a huge joke. That's That's what I'm gonna say. Toneri in the last was a straight up joke. I don't think anybody can deny that. Abilities, alright, he's kinda cool. But as a character, nah. Not really great at all. And really, even if you go by like the Naruto the movie plot, Momoshiki really doesn't have that much of a character to himself. I feel like it's only now we're getting a little bit more of like how Momoshiki is. I'm not saying we're getting a lot of it, but I do feel like him being attached to Boruto, kind of like how Kurama was like back in the old days of Naruto. Like that contrast and that conversation the two of them would have. It is very similar to that extent. So the fact that Momoshiki also talked about that, yeah, I'm a bit familiar with the Shinjitsu also. I think could mean we're gonna get more stuff about him in the coming future. I think. But um again, Sumire doing a little bit of stuff I thought was actually kind of neat. It's not much, but it's neat. And this whole future flash forward thing is intriguing. And we see that Kawaki's in his form, his karma mode, if you will. So we know something's gonna lead to that. We don't know how, but something will lead us there. And if we're going off the opening 2 pages of the first chapter, or even really the opening page of chapter 1, we know Konoha gets into ruins. Like that by itself is like already guaranteed. But the question is gonna be how do we get there? And whatever this flash forward is, I think is gonna lead us to that point. But like I said, it's intriguing. I was really intrigued by the stuff we got in this chapter. Like comparing chapter 74 and chapter 75. Chapter 74, like I said, was like okay plus to like good read. And I'm leaning more towards okay plus. Because plot wise, we didn't really get too much. And this one, yeah, you could say we didn't really get a lot in terms of like what's going on. But there's a lot for the world building side. And when you do world building stuff and you dive a little bit more further into that, I always find that kind of fascinating. So on that aspect alone, I'll give it a great plus. It's a great plus chapter Boruto. You could argue it's amazing. I was really gonna go for amazing plus, but again, I do feel like that little stretch of comedy wasn't really needed, personally. And yeah, aside from that, you guys, that's pretty much all I gotta say when it comes to this month's chapter of Boruto. And overall, both ratings together, okay plus to let's say amazing. It's an amazing chapter Boruto. So okay plus to amazing. That automatically brings the overall rating to uh these two chapters as a whole a great rating as a whole. So let me know what you guys thoughts were about the chapter. What was your favorite parts about it? What do you guys think that future vision means for Boruto? And how do you guys think we're gonna get there? Let me know what you guys' thoughts are in the comment section, and I'll be sure to respond to them as best as I can. And aside from that, guys, that's pretty much it. I'm Lokachi7. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more Boruto Naruto Next Generations, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.